encourage everyone to switch your view to speaker view. This is in the top right corner of your Zoom screen and will let you focus on the speaker. I am Jordan Lash.
Jordan Lash is a senior from Huntington Woods, Michigan. Jordan currently serves as an ASEA, or President of Michigan Region, where she works with regional and chapter leaders to implement new programs and strengthen the region. She will be attending University of Michigan in the fall, where she is a legacy, joining her father, Joe, who was once upon a time fraternity brothers with our guest here, Adam Schefter. They were both brothers at Sigma Alpha Mu, one of the historically Jewish fraternities at Michigan.
Jacob Harris is a senior in high school from Boca Raton, Florida. In BBYO, Jacob currently serves as Sagan, or Vice President of Programming in Gold Coast Region in South Florida. He spends his time interning with Congressman Ted Deutsch of Florida's 22nd District and is a loyal fan of the Miami Heat and Dolphins. This fall, he will be studying at Vanderbilt University. Anchor down. We are excited to be your host for this evening's event.
We are excited to welcome Adam Schefter to BBYO On Demand tonight. Adam Schefter is a senior NFL insider at ESPN, where he joined in August of 2009, and now appears on a variety of programs, including NFL Live, Sunday NFL Countdown, Monday Night Countdown, SportsCenter, and more throughout the year. He also hosts his own ESPN audio podcast, the Adam Schefter Podcast, and regularly contributes to other ESPN platforms such as ESPN.com and ESPN Radio.
One of the top sports reporters in the industry, Schefter has covered the NFL since 1990. His influence extends to Twitter, where he has over 7.5 million followers. Schefter has large followings on Instagram and Facebook as well. Due to the demands of his job, Schefter always has his phones nearby. He is considered the first commentator in sports news and any other genre to use his phone during show appearances to break stories in real time.
A native of Belmore, New York, Schefter graduated from the University of Michigan and later earned his master's degree at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. Adam is truly one of sports and the NFL's leading media insiders, and we are so grateful for you taking the time out of your busy schedule in the wake of the NFL draft to spend an evening with us here at BBYO. We're so glad to have you.
Adam, it's so nice to have you here with us tonight on demand.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was my introduction. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Well, most of the teens on this call know you from ESPN, and I know you have covered sports for the Michigan Daily, Rocky Mountain News, and the Denver Post. But I have a feeling that this writing is on the front page article in this edition of the Sammy newspaper had to be the highlight of your journalism career. And I'm pretty sure that you're one of the only ones that on that football team to make it to the NFL. So go ahead, you can introduce yourself. We would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Jordan. That article was sent to me this week. I didn't realize that you were Joe's daughter, so now I made the connection once you were introduced there. So that's tremendous. And please send my regards to your dad. That article was awesome. I shared it with a couple of my fraternity brothers, and they loved reading that. And I it was funny when I read it over them. I vaguely remember writing it. It was, it would have been 31, 32 years ago that I actually wrote that. So you guys weren't even born yet. But being in Michigan was a tremendous thrill, and the career path that I followed and journeyed out into, hopefully there's some wisdom tonight that I can impart along the way that would make sense for all of you and help offer some guidance as you embark upon your careers. But Michigan was a tremendous place. It's in my soul. It's a special university. And, I just hope you all are able to get to go to college next year and experience the full 4-year experience that we were fortunate enough to do. We'll see whether that happens. I'm cautiously optimistic, but what do I know? I'm not involved in science. I'm just a sports reporter for ESPN at this point in time. And working for ESPN has been a great honor. It's something I've done for 11 years. I worked at the NFL Network for 5 years before ESPN. So it's basically 16 years in television, about 15 plus years in newspapers, so over 30 years in the media. And I feel very blessed and privileged to be able to have done what I have, to do what I do today. And again, it's a tough time for all of us, and it's an honor to be with all of you tonight. And hopefully there's a lot of questions. And like I said, I can leave you some thoughts that stir in your mind and somehow you draw some guidance and inspiration from.
Yeah, thank you. So it's really cool. I'm glad we found that article. And going off of that, we want to know, how has your experience at Michigan shaped you as a reporter and as a person?
Well, that was, without Michigan, I wouldn't be a reporter today. That's really the bottom line. And there's a lesson in this for everybody here. And a couple of you may have been on Twitter today. Ernie Johnson, who hosts the NBA show on TNT, asked me to teach a Twitter session, sports journalism class, for an hour. And I was trying to figure out the technology. So tonight I have better lighting. I have a different position. A few things that I'm trying to improve upon from this afternoon. But as I said on that session, and if it's repetitive for anybody, I apologize, but I think it's worth hearing. When I went to Michigan in the fall of 1985, way a long time ago, I went there with the idea that I would be going to business school or law school, something very typical, traditional, stereotypical, Jewish boy from Long Island, going to go try to get ahead in some type of graduate program. And when I went to school, I rushed a fraternity my freshman year, and they had only about 10, 11, 12 spots they were giving out to about 50 guys. And I didn't get one. I was not offered a spot in the fraternity my freshman year. And so I went down to the football office to see if they needed somebody to pick up jock straps and hand out water bottles, and they didn't need somebody. And I went down to the basketball office to see if they needed something, and they didn't need anybody. And I'm like, okay, well, there's no fraternity, no football office, no basketball office. I got to do something, because I've always been the kind of guy that felt it was important to be productive and busy. And so I said, well, let me try the student newspaper. That might be kind of fun. And it was on a total whim. I only did it because Michigan was a big sports school, and I thought, well, that'll be kind of cool to be able to be around these sports programs. And so I went to school with the idea that I would be in business school or law school, wound up going to the student newspaper, the Michigan Daily, and wound up turning it into a profession that I had no idea would ever be my profession when I set out to go to Ann Arbor in the fall of 1985. And the moral there, well, there's a lot of morals there, but the moral there is that there'll be plenty of windows that close on every one of you as you embark upon your careers and lives and college experiences. There'll be a lot of people that say no. There'll be a lot of opportunities that are denied. And you know what? So what? That just means it wasn't meant to be for that one. You go on to the next one, whether that's a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a job, a fraternity, a sorority, whatever it may be. You just keep moving on and you make the best of it. And you never know. Sometimes the rejections you get turn out to be the biggest blessings in your life.
That's great. Really something that I think resonates with a lot of us. In BBYO, we have a lot of elections that young high schoolers are a part of in order to have leadership positions in their chapter and in their regions. And I think we all face rejection at one point or another.
But let me interrupt 1 second. I see like little questions floating on the bottom, and I'm not as tech savvy as you all who have grown up with this. Am I supposed to be like looking at those? Should I ignore them? Should people be sending them? I'm happy to get to all the questions. I just don't know what the proper protocols here are.
Yeah, so we have a few questions prepared for you. So we'll run through those, and then we'll open it up for some questions.
Yeah, because I see little questions popping up on the bottom, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and I get to answer as many questions as possible.
Yeah, you're doing great. Just ignore those for now. We'll get to them.
Great.
All right. So one of the greatest things BBYO does is develop leaders. And I've learned firsthand how important mentors are in that development. Who are your mentors early in your career, and what did they teach you? And what would be your advice to aspirational high schoolers who are hoping to establish themselves in the world of sports?
Great questions. When I went to Michigan, I would say that when I went to work for the Michigan Daily and I began reading Mitch Albom in Detroit, Mitch had started at that paper, the Detroit Free Press, oddly enough, that summer in August of 1989. I enrolled at Michigan in September of 89 or 85. He started in August of 85. I enrolled in September of 85. And I remember reading him, and I never, ever read anything like that before. It was just, it blew me away. And I thought, well, I want to be like Mitch. And I got to meet him at some of the press conferences. And I remember my senior year, he said to me, hey, if you're not too busy, I wouldn't mind asking you some questions. I was like, oh my God, because I idolized the guy. And so it turned out he was writing a book on Bo Schembechler, the late, great Michigan football coach. And he asked me to be one of his research assistants. And I was like, oh yeah, how much do I have to pay you to do that job? And actually, he was going to pay me, and my job was to gather anecdotes and stories. And I just watched everything that Mitch did and wrote, and he was absolutely one of my mentors, as was a gentleman who worked for the Detroit Free Press by the name of Thomas George, who was a great man, is a great man. When I was flying to Minnesota my junior year to cover a Michigan basketball game, he was on the flight, went over, sat with him, and he was the one that convinced me, hey, if you like this, the reporting end of things, you can make a living doing this. And I was like, really? You can do this for a living? Like, I didn't realize that people would do that for a living. And he said, yeah. And I said, wow. And he was really the first person that convinced me that if I wanted, you could try to make a living doing that. Nobody had mentioned that to me. I just thought it was kind of a fun little thing. I always thought it was a job that somebody else did. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but the point there is that if there's something you want to do, you want to be the president of the United States, you want to be a general manager of a sports team, you want to do anything like that, you can do whatever you want to do. Go try to do that. I really thought that being a sports reporter was something that was unattainable. And I was taught otherwise while I was at Michigan. So to get back to the initial question, if Michigan doesn't happen, I probably never go to the student newspaper. If I don't go to the student newspaper, I'm not in the business I am today. So Michigan changed everything. Now, what advice would I have for a young student in your position? The one thing that I would always say to everybody is when you're in high school, when you're in college, particularly when you're in college, try to spend your summers, if you can, getting internships, experiencing different things, trying different jobs, meeting different people. But every summer is an opportunity for you to go try a different job. And I don't care if you're not getting paid. You know, you have to live at home. Go work for a radio station. Go work for a TV station. Go work for a newspaper. Go work for a sports team. Go work for a PR firm. Go work for an agency. Go work for whoever. And get that on your resume. Watch how they do their job. See what you like. See what you don't like. See how you'd like to make a living. See what you feel passionate about. See what you don't feel passionate about. See what really gets you going. What gets you excited. And then you'll have a better idea of what you'd like to do when you get older, in addition to having the experiences to put on your resume, in addition to meeting people and having references and recommendations and people who can help guide you. So to me, it's imperative that while you're in college, which this is something I never did, and this is something I'm telling you to do, use your summers as training grounds and experiments to figure out or gain clarity and a better understanding of what you want to do when you get older.
Thanks, Adam. I think that was really great advice. And I really love that you looked up to Mitch Albom. I've read a lot of his books, and I love all of them. So it's really cool that now you're someone that a lot of people look up to, and being one of the most notable sports media figures, and in turn, one of the most notable Jewish sports media figures. What can you tell us about how you connect your Jewish identity, and if at all, that has impacted your career?
You know, it hasn't impacted me that much, but you know, the funny thing is that we don't find a lot of Jewish players, but there are plenty of general managers or front office members or owners who are Jewish. And while I don't have an overly strong connection to my religion, I'm proud of being Jewish. I'm proud of what the people in our religion have done. And so to me, it's just one more bond and connection I share with a lot of people out there in the sports world.
Definitely. It's definitely something that we're proud of, and the fact that you're Jewish, I think a lot of us really translate that in ourselves and reflect that towards the success that we may be able to have in the future. Speaking of which, in 2013, you spoke with several students at your alma mater about some of the sacrifices and experiences of rejection that you lived early in your career. You've even shared some of those with us already, but could you tell us a little bit more about these moments and how they've really shaped your career?
My career was filled with them, and many of you will encounter similar obstacles as you embark upon your professional paths. When I was at Michigan and I was going into my senior year, I must have applied to 200, 300, 400 newspapers. And I put together batches of clippings and a personalized book and spent a lot of money FedExing these packets and booklets to sports editors across the country and didn't get a single job offer, not one. And that was why I did go to graduate school and try to add on my education, get another degree, and work on the side for the Chicago Tribune. It was an invaluable experience at that point in time. But there was rejection there. It took me 2 full years over to get a full-time job as a newspaper reporter. And once I got the full-time job, then I wanted to move up at the newspaper in Denver, the Rocky Mountain News. Colorado got its first baseball team in the early 90s, the Colorado Rockies. I wanted to go cover that team, didn't get that job. And we could go through my entire life and career and all the rejection that I had, from not getting into the fraternity to not getting the job I wanted, to being forced to go to the newspaper, to all the rejection letters, to finally winding up in Denver, to not getting the jobs I wanted out there, to wanting to become a sports columnist and being denied that opportunity, to then going to the NFL Network for 5 years, to basically have my contract run out and have them in a position where they didn't treat me fairly, which was a disappointment and an obstacle until ESPN came along and hired me. So again, I'll just go back to this. Every time one of these windows closes, another one opens, right? I wanted to cover the baseball team, the Colorado Rockies, in the worst way in the early 90s. And the Rocky Mountain News and my bosses at the time told me, no, we're going to leave you on the football beat, the poor old football beat, which obviously over the last 25, 30 years has just grown and grown and grown to where I think everybody would agree football is the most popular sport in our country, which wasn't always the case. And football is where I think it arouses the most passions in people, and people fancy football is big, and the TV contracts and the money that around the sport are tremendous. And so I got put on football because by accident. I wanted to stay in newspapers, but they wouldn't give me the sports column. So I made the move to NFL Network. I mean, it's been dumb luck all along the way, and it just worked out. But the one thing that stayed true the entire time was I always worked hard. I always tried to treat people right. I always tried to do the honorable things. And so inevitably, I believe that if Michigan and the football team had given me an opportunity back in 1985, we'll never know this, but I believe that I could have wound up in football, in that profession, maybe working for a team, working as a coach, working in a front office. I don't know. But if that door had opened, I'll bet that as hard as I worked, as much as I cared, as driven as I was, that might have worked out too. But again, it just comes back to you being committed to whatever it is that you're doing, finding something that you feel excited about, feel an energy and passion about, being committed to it, sacrificing for it. And if you do those things and handle yourself the right way and treat people the right way, I don't know exactly how it will work out, but it usually will work out.
Great. It's really inspiring, your ability to move past the rejection and you talk about having a lot of experience and having a bunch of different jobs. So you have been involved in covering the NFL for almost 30 years. Since it was virtual, how was the recent NFL draft different from previous years? And what was the biggest challenge for you covering the draft? And is there anything new that you would keep for next year?
Well, I would say that it was a different experience because there's something about being in a setting where there's a lot of people and there's a lot of energy and a lot of adrenaline in the crowd. And I'm working with my friend and colleague, Chris Mortensen, and we're side by side comparing notes, as opposed to me just being in the room that I'm sitting in right now. This is the chair that I sat in for the NFL draft right there. There's the camera over there that ESPN would flash into me. And so this was my workspace. This has been my workspace since the shelter at home orders have been in place since mid-March. And this is where I've done all my television hits out of, this room right here for ESPN. So the challenge this year, I think, was just that there were so many other voices and elements on ESPN's production. They didn't get to me on the opening night of the draft until the 13th overall pick, when the 49ers traded out and moved back a slot so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could come up one slot to take Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. And so ordinarily I would be disappointed that we're going in an hour and a half in the broadcast and they haven't gotten to me. But it's a different year. We've got all these cameras, these prospects in their homes with cameras. We've got people from NFL Network working in ESPN. Just a lot going on. And you know what? They didn't get to me till an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes into the the way it goes, right? There are a lot worse things in the world. What am I going to tell you? So you sit back and you wait patiently. And so it was just a different kind of year in that regard. There are a lot more elements to get used to, a lot more juggling. And that's fine. It was just a different kind of experience doing it in your office, looking into a camera for 4 hours, as opposed to being surrounded by crowds and energy and fans and people yelling at you, good and bad, so it was a very different experience.
Sure. To finish off a recap of the NFL draft, obviously we know that sometimes you stay away from sharing your opinion, but would you tell us who you think had the best draft and which teams may have struggled a bit more?
Yeah, I know people want to know those things, but the truth of the matter, we don't know. I mean, and we won't know for a while. You could have asked me this question 3 years ago, and I promise you my answer probably would not have been that the Chiefs had the best draft in 2017 when they traded up from 27 to 10 to go take Patrick Mahomes, or the Texans went from 24 to 12 to go draft Deshaun Watson. So we don't know who's going to be the stars, and the experts don't know. So I wouldn't even venture a guess as to who had the best draft. I would just say that check back with me in a couple of years, and I'll be happy to give you the answer at that point in time.
Definitely will.
Great. So I think we have some time for questions from the audience. So if you have a question, just make sure to put it in the chat and we'll get to it.
Well, they've been great questions so far, and I want to make sure we get to try to answer everybody's question, as many questions as possible. And I like the career questions, the reporting questions, the life advice questions more than I like the football questions, because the football questions, we do that all the time. And this is an opportunity, I think, for everybody to try to do something from there. So anyway, I'll turn over the questions to you as I get some texts, and we'll go from there.
So Adam, while we wait for some questions to roll in, how does it feel to be the first to know about a groundbreaking story? And yeah, just having all of that right there with you.
In my business, that's the single most gratifying. Well, that's the best feeling that you can get. Like, there's nothing like getting a big story and putting it out. And this year it was kind of interesting. There are a lot of stories. There always are. And over 30 years, there have been a lot of stories. But just this past year, they're very fresh in my mind. There were a couple of stories where I happened to be with my family my entire family as the stories were unfolding. And that's one of the challenges of the job, right? Where we were having in August, we were at my mother-in-law's surprise 75th birthday party. She had just walked in to have dinner. We sit down. I get a text from somebody that said, "Hey, do you have a few minutes?" And I thought to myself, oh man, like just sat down at my mother-in-law's 75th. I said to that person, well, I just sat down at a surprise birthday dinner for my mother-in-law, 75, everything okay? And the person texted back, well, I just had a little information. And so I went outside and I called the person, and the person just said, hey, I just want to give you a heads up that Andrew Luck is retiring. I was like, oh, okay. And so followed the story in the presence of my family. And I mean, it was, I don't know if anybody remembers that from this summer, but it was pretty memorable. And all of a sudden you had waiters and bartenders and people off the street, walking into the restaurant. Everybody wanted to know about it, and sharing it with your family was incredible. Like they drove home. I'm doing Sports Center hits on the phone. It was pretty cool. And then similarly this year in this very office, in the chair I'm sitting in right now, I was here when I got the call that Tom Brady was going to be a Buccaneer. And my wife and daughter were sitting right here, and they watched me press send on Twitter, and Tom Brady's expected to be with the Buccaneers. And, we were celebrating the whole thing. And when you get to share it like that, it's pretty memorable. It's something I won't ever forget, because it felt like they were a part of it too.
Sure. I have one more question before we're still waiting for some questions to roll in. When you think back on all of the work you've done or the jobs you've had, is there one like key moment or defining quality where you kind of realized your success and what's allowed you to become as accomplished as you are today?
It's just not how I think. I don't ever say, okay, I've arrived, this is it. Because every day people are trying to beat you to a story. And so you're always on edge. You're always, wondering what's next. You're always making more calls. I don't ever think I've arrived. I don't allow myself to think like that. Maybe I should more often. But it's not something I've done. And there are plenty of moments. Listen, I've been doing this now for over 30 years. So now I'm 53 years old. So a lot of these coaches are in their 30s, or 40s, and the GMs are in their 30s, and I feel a lot older than them. And so somewhere along the way, it shifted from me looking up to these people and to sometimes them bouncing things off you and getting some guidance or advice. And I don't know when that happened, but it has happened. There's a head coach that called me today. We're on the phone for 35 minutes talking about a particular issue that he's going through. And that's not a conversation that I would have had 15 years ago, but it just evolved over time to where it did today. And so, again, it's an honor and a privilege to have the trust of these people and for them to turn to you at certain points over certain issues. And I always find it to be an honor still. So I kind of long rambling answer to a different question, probably. Apologize.
No problem.
That was great. We're excited to share some questions from the audience.
Yeah, they've been rolling. Oh yeah, I see
Yeah.
Your dad to say. I just see your dad said one. Who's a better athlete, Jeff Wilpup or Hampton Dellinger? Tell your dad that it's Hampton's birthday today.
I will.
Hampton was a better athlete, I think.
So
Is your dad listening in? Is he listening in right now? Or?
Yep, another room.
There you go.
So how do you build trust and relationship with your sources?
Hold on. I actually have a former Michigan football player. Hold on one second. I want to just, he keeps texting me and I just want to just cut this off. Just 1 second.
Can you drop a Schefter bomb for us?
An Adam bomb.
Adam bomb. There you go.
So basically, what was the question? Repeat it one more time.
How do you build trust and
Yeah.
relationship? Yeah.
Well, but you know what it is? Again, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. So a lot of these people I've known for an awful long time. And just like, think about when you went to high school and you met somebody for the first time in 9th grade. Were you closer with them in 10th grade and then 11th grade and then 12th grade? Yes, right? And so that was 4 years. And when you go to college, you'll get closer. You'll meet somebody your freshman year. You'll like them or not. And some people get closer to your sophomore year and some not. And some closer to your junior year and some not. And some your senior year and some not. But you just build it over time. And again, you're changing paths in life. You're going from high school to college, so different people, and then a job. So I've been in the job for 30 years. So I've been around a lot of these people for a long time. You know, as an example, it's amazing. You know, I used to cover a training camp for the Denver Broncos back in the 90s. And one of their best players was a guy by the name of Ed Mccaffrey. He was a wide receiver. And Ed McCaffrey's wife would come with their 4 kids all the time. And their 4 kids are now Max McCaffrey, who's bounced around the NFL, is now an assistant coach with his father, Eddie Greeley. Next oldest, Christian McCaffrey, the running back of the Panthers. The next one is Dylan McCaffrey. He's a quarterback at Michigan and maybe the starting quarterback. And the youngest is going to be a freshman, Luke, at Nebraska this year. So, like the McCaffrey family, Mike Shanahan was the head coach. He had a son, a little boy that was the bull boy that I would talk to all the time. That bull boy is now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. So how do you develop sources? I don't know. You're around these people for a long time. You spend time with them. You get to know them. You treat them right. You do the right thing. And inevitably some relationships blossom. Some don't. Some grow. Some don't. And you get close to some people, and that's sort of how it works.
All right, so we have a decent amount of questions from the audience. If anyone has any other questions, please chat them to BBYO On Demand privately so we can get those filtered. Our next question, if you could interview any athlete from any sport, from any era, who would it be and why?
Well, it's always the big story, right? So like today, Aaron Rodgers would be fun to interview. Last month, it would have been Tom Brady. Whatever's hot, whatever's topical, whatever would be in the news at ESPN would be something that I'd want to do. So it's not like, I don't aspire to go interview anybody. I'm always looking for what the next, big story is in the NFL. Like even today, I got a call this morning. I was about to go on a Peloton ride, and somebody called me and said the Bengals are releasing Andy Dalton. You get a rush of adrenaline. You put the story out on Twitter, Instagram, so Facebook, social media, and like at that moment, that was kind of cool just to get that information. And that feeling never has gotten old, and still is not old today. And I still care about it. And so I don't care so much about the interview as I do the information. So that would be my answer. I'd rather get the information than an interview, and I'd rather the information be current. But if you want me to interview anybody, it would be somebody that's in the news.
So we have another great question from the audience.
A lot of great questions.
Yeah. So I've seen your videos, and I'm sure a lot of people have, with your daughter. So what's it like to take your daughter to work? And she has a huge personality. I am just so impressed by her interviewing skills.
Well, thank you. That's been incredibly gratifying. And, it started out, she did the red carpet ESPYs, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. She was 7 or 8 years old, and she's interviewing Steph Curry and Odell Beckham. And I was honestly amazed at how fearless she was. Like, she just didn't care. I know if I were 8, 9 years old and talking to some of these athletes that I saw on TV, I'd be tongue-tied. I would not be able to talk. I'd be in awe. And she did that. And then we flew to Michigan together, and she interviewed Tom Brady and Bill Belichick there, and that was kind of cool. Rob Gronkowski. She did the Golden State Warriors in their run. This year we went to the Pro Bowl, and she did a couple of packages for ESPN. But I'll tell you the thing that's the most meaningful, and I haven't shared this story with a lot of people, but we were at the Pro Bowl on the day that Kobe Bryant died. And, it's one of those things like anybody on this call that nobody will ever forget, I would imagine, correct? I mean, and you guys didn't even really watch Kobe Bryant. Well, maybe you did. I don't know. But it was a big deal. We had about a segment or two left in our pregame show, and we started getting word that Kobe's helicopter had crashed, and it wasn't confirmed. And we're on TV, and we're waiting for the confirmation as the producers are talking in our ears. And just as we got off air, we got the word that he indeed had perished in that helicopter crash. And we went into the trailer that was our production meeting area where a lot of the people go. And inside the room was a PR person from ESPN by the name of Mac Nulu and Susie Colbert, who was hysterical crying, and me and my daughter. Like, we walked in, Mac was sitting there dazed, Susie was hysterical. And I was honestly taken aback at how affected she was by it, like a lot of people. And it was almost uncomfortable. And I said, Susie, you okay? Did you know him? And she goes, no, I'm just so broken up by it. I can't take it with the kids. And my daughter, who doesn't really know Susie Colbert very well, walks over and goes and gives her a big hug and says, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's going to be okay. And I was like, oh my God, like, I didn't even do that. She did. And it blew me away. I was like, wow. And even the next week, Susie and the ESPN PR guy said it was one of the more incredible things they had witnessed, that an 11-year-old girl would show the poise to do that. Now, listen, we've been in quarantine for 2 months, so I can't stand her sometimes too. So I don't want to make her out to be bigger than she is or better than she is. I don't want her to get a big head, but she has shown a lot of tremendous poise and fearlessness. But everybody's on everybody's nerves now after 2 months of the quarantine.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We can definitely tell that your relationship with Dylan is really special. And before we forget, we'd love to host her at her first BBYO event.
She'd love it. She loves that. She loves performing for a crowd.
That's great. I mean, we'd love to have her. But more on that later. Our next question is, how do your emotions and the human aspect of your job play a role when a player that you might know or have a relationship with gets cut or traded?
Well, I don't have as many player relationships at this stage of my life as I once did. Back when I was covering the Broncos on a daily basis, and every guy on the team, and their families, that of course that would affect you. You'd be sad for them. You never like to see anybody cut, but now it's different. Like, as an example, I was at the Super Bowl this year in Miami, and the Chiefs were playing the 49ers. And the game ended. And it was one of these games where I've got a lot of people that I'm friendly with in the Chiefs organization, and everybody wanted to see Andy Reid win a Super Bowl for the first time. And that was great to see. But at the same time, I've got a ton of friends on the 49ers, or a ton of relationships with people on the 49ers, including Kyle Shanahan. And so I was in a box with a team that invited me in the box. They weren't going to be there. They said, come use our box. I said, great. And I walked out. The game ended. I walked out of the box. I made a right. And who was the very first person that I saw as soon as I made a right out of the box? It was Peggy Shanahan, Kyle's mom. And she was not happy. And, I tried to talk to her, and I said, hey, football's been great to you and your family. There have been a lot of high points. and there'll be some low points. And unfortunately, this is one of those low points. But there's a lot of great things ahead. And she said, Mike. And Mike came out of the box, and Mike wasn't happy. And so it's just one of those moments I'll always remember. It was not something that was planned. It was not something that was expected. The oddity of it was just incredible to me that they were the very first people that I saw as soon as I walked out of this place that I watched the game. And I just felt very bad for them. As happy as I was for the people in Kansas City, I was even more sad for the people that had their heart broken that night.
Thank you for sharing. So how has
you guys are getting all the emotional stories tonight? Like,
yeah. Thank you so much. How has the evolution of technology and especially Twitter impacted your job?
Oh, I mean, it's unbelievable. Everything's instantaneous now. So I could be on this call right now and get a text that, the Patriots just traded for, or just signed Cam Newton, which didn't happen. And, it would be bam, like that. And so to go back to that Andrew Luck story of that night, I pressed send on Twitter. File to ESPN. Andrew Luck is retiring from the NFL, whatever it was that I wrote on Twitter. And just to show you the instantaneous nature of the world we're living in, right? My phone rang 60 seconds later. 60 seconds. And it was Matthew Hasselbeck, who used to play backup quarterback for Andrew Luck in Indianapolis. And he's like, did you just report that Andrew Luck's retiring? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I think so. Why? And he goes, well, I just spent the last 2 days with him in Indianapolis. I was with him Friday and Saturday, and he never mentioned it to me. And I went, oh, my God. Now, this was in like 60 seconds. Tweet, call, heart dropping into my chest. Oh, my God, did I get something wrong? And it's just the world you live in. Like, one announcement, one tweet, one story, and boom, the results are instantaneous. And so you could be in your house at dinner, going to bed, getting out of the shower, and news is coming in, and you never know when, and you never know where. Like, again, this morning I was about to get on my Peloton bike. Phone rang. Hey, just want to give you a heads up. Andy Dalton released. Whoa, okay. Bike ride waits. Story filed. Go on TV. So that's just the way that the world operates. And I guess it's not all that different. It's much less significant than the world that a doctor lives in. You get paid to go take care of a patient, or somebody who's buying or trading stocks. They get a call. Hey, go buy this, go sell that right away. So it just so happens that mine is done publicly on social media, on ESPN, whatever it may be. And so a few more people notice it than some of these other jobs that also have to respond instantaneously to requests that they get.
Yeah, just like as I think back to that Andrew Luck scenario, I remember him being booed off of the field. Is that,
yeah,
you think that was has to be another consequence of the instantaneous nature?
And I mean, listen, that was unfortunate, right? But I get the story. I'm not thinking, oh boy, they're in the third quarter of a game. Like, that's the only other time I've ever done that was I reported during a game that Carson Wentz tore his ACL against the Rams. And so the players are probably on the field and maybe getting word that he tore his ACL like that. That's unusual. That doesn't happen very often. When it does, it can create a different kind of reaction.
Is that something that like you might regret? Would you?
Listen, my job is to report news whenever it happens. And there were some people that were offended by the Andrew Luck news, and that's fine. That's their right. But what I would say is, number one, he told people in the organization that week they were going to do a press conference on Friday. I don't understand why they didn't. They decided to wait to Sunday. he was gonna tell his teammates after the game. I didn't, I subsequently found this out afterwards. Like, Andrew Luck is one of the biggest stars in the sport. If he's telling people that he's retiring during the week and they're gonna have a press conference on Friday and they pushed it back to Sunday, it's not my job to wait for him when I get the information. It's just not. And so it's unfortunate that it worked out the way it did. But again, that's my job, is to report news when I have it. And I got the news and I put it out. I don't care what quarter they're in. I don't care that they're on the field. I don't care about any of that, frankly. I care that it's right. I care that it's accurate. I care that it's timely and relevant. And it was all those things.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Our next question is, we know that nothing these days is typical, but what does a daily schedule in the life of Adam Schefter, what does that look like?
Well, there's really not a typical day. We could go in season, and there are more typical days in season, in the football season, than there are out of season. In season, yeah, you could tell me, where are you Sunday at 1:20, and I could tell you where I'm going to be. Like, I'm leaving my house at 5:30 in the morning. I'm driving to Bristol. This is what it was pre-COVID-19. I don't know how it'll be this year, but pre-COVID-19, any other year, the last 11 years at ESPN, I'm leaving my house 5:30, 5:45 Sunday morning, driving to ESPN, meeting more for breakfast, going into a meeting, doing the early sports center, doing notes, getting ready for Sunday countdown at 10 a.m., doing the show from 10 to 1, going to watch games, traveling to the city where Monday Night Football is for the Monday Night pregame show, planes, trains, automobiles, whatever it may be, to get there, get to the hotel, get caught up on news and information, highlights, results, get ready for the show tomorrow, wake up early, go to a meeting, try to sneak in a workout if you can, make calls, text people, get more information, radio show here, radio show there, another meeting, go to the stadium, get ready for the pregame show, do the pregame show, do the halftime show. Maybe you could fly to the city that night. Maybe it's first thing Tuesday morning at 6 in the morning. Tuesday, you're working on news. Wednesday, you might be on SportsCenter. Thursday, I'm going to Get Up, working NFL Live in the afternoon, all while getting ready to do all the notes that I'm going to be doing on Sunday and Monday again. I mean, in season, that's in season. You could almost – there's a certain rhythm and routine to it. Out of season, I have no idea when Tom Brady's going to sign with Tampa. I have no idea when the Bengals are going to cut Andy Dalton. I have no idea when the Patriots are going to trade Rob Gronkowski. It could happen in any moment of any day. So the off season, in a way, is like my regular season, and the regular season, in a way, is like my off season.
Was there any moment that you felt you made it to the big leagues of sportscasting?
Well, the biggest made it moment that I probably have ever had in my career was getting my first newspaper reporting job back in 1990 for the Rocky Mountain News. Again, I had looked for 2 years and couldn't get any kind of job. And I finally got an offer from the Los Angeles Times to cover high school sports in one of their bureaus in Orange County. And I went out celebrating in New York City that night, and I got back. There was a message from the sports editor of the Rocky Mountain News. Flew out to Denver in the morning. They offered me a job. I took that job as opposed to LA. It was not a high school sports reporting job. It was not in a bureau. It was for, Denver was not the big city then that it is today, but it was a nice sized city. And so I moved to Denver in 1990 and started my football reporting career. And again, I didn't pick Denver. Denver picked me. It was the place that offered me a job. And it just so happened that I got to cover a team that won 2 Super Bowls, that allowed me to write 3 different books, that allowed me to spend 16 years covering the team, learning how to do it, building on my career, building on the people I knew. Again, I couldn't have planned it any better than it worked out. But you can wonder, okay, well, again, if I had worked that hard in the legal profession, in the business profession, for a sports team, what would have happened? I don't know. Maybe it would have worked out really well that way too. Maybe it wouldn't have. I can't imagine that there would have been a job that would have been more gratifying than the one that I've had, but maybe there was. I don't know. We'll never know.
Our next question asks whether or not playing Madden is in your job description, and how do you think that Madden kind of influences or impacts the game?
I've never played Madden. I've only done voiceovers for Madden. So I don't know. I know that when Lamar Jackson announced a couple of weeks ago that he was going to be on the cover of it, that it was a big deal. I was very quick to put that on my Instagram account and my Facebook account because I know the kind of reaction it gets. It generates a lot of attention. But I've never played it, so I don't know how that works.
The next question is, which is more fun for you personally, the draft or free agency?
Well, it's a great question. And what I would say to you is this, that free agency is my main event of the year. Free agency, it feels like I am the quarterback of the team, that it's kind of your game to win or lose. The draft, I feel like I'm playing guard. Yeah, there are other people that are more important in our draft coverage. Mil Kiper, Todd McShay, who was sick this year, Louis Riddick, Trey Wingo. I'm just a cog in the wheel for the draft. And free agency, you feel like your cog matters more than it does in the draft. So I like them both. The draft I love because it's always the last event before I have a couple of quiet months. It's sort of like your last final in high school. You're done. The last test you take in June, you've got a couple of months off for the summer, and it's a great feeling. You love that feeling, and that's what the draft is for me. And it's a lot of work, but I love the draft. I love free agency. I love the Super Bowl because it means that it's the end of the season, and for the first time in 7 months, I'll be able to have a Sunday off. I don't see my family usually on Sundays from September 1 through the first week in February. Never spend a Sunday with them. And that's unfortunate, but we're trying to make up for it now during the quarantine.
We'll close out with this last question to wrap up.
Have we gotten to all the questions? Because if you want to just rapid fire them, I'm happy to do that. Trust me.
I think we'll keep this at this one. There are a lot of questions left, but that's really okay. I think we've made sure to hit all the important ones. So this question is from Brian Barth from Manhattan. He asks, as an aspiring sportscaster, what is some advice you would give to someone in high school who dreams of getting to work in the industry?
Yeah, again, what I would say is, I don't care whether you want to be a sportscaster. I don't care whether you want to be a doctor. I don't care whether you want to be a scientist. I don't care whether you want to be a stock trader, a hedge fund guy or gal or whatever it may be. Again, I'll go back to using your summers to advance your career. Do things that you learn from, that you learn about. You asked about mentors. When I got out to Colorado, there were a lot of people that I was around, and I loved watching them and learning from them. But there were people that I watched that I also learned what I wouldn't want to do and what I wouldn't want to be like. And so, again, it's a different deal. But if you're setting out in anything, do things over the summer of your college years. If you can do it in your high school years, which I don't know if you have to, that's a bonus. If you ever do that during your high school time, bonus points. But college, freshman to sophomore year, sophomore to junior, junior to senior year, those are 3 summers that you should be spending as an intern somewhere in the field that you are curious about, interested in, whatever it may be. You get 3 summers, or really 4, because you could do the one going into your college year 2, but 4 summers to kind of get a line in your resume, right? And there should be 4 added lines on your resume. That's what I would say.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Adam, for taking the time to join us tonight and share your experiences and words of wisdom. And to our parents, alumni, and friends, if you enjoyed tonight's program, check out our full schedule of events on BBYO On Demand and consider becoming a member of our BBYO On Demand fan club for exclusive perks and bonus experiences like an upcoming Q&A with co-producer and writer of NBC hits, This Is Us.
Adam, we've loved having you. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing your stories and just hanging out with us. And don't think that we forgot about hosting Dylan at a local BBYO event. We really want that to happen. It's been great to get behind the scenes look, and we really had a blast. We'll see you soon, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Well, you guys did a great job. I appreciate having me. Thank you all for your questions, and I wish everybody the best of luck going forward. Hopefully something I said tonight resonates and sticks with somebody. Be well and stay safe.